Hello, I'm Rascador. Today, I'm going to do the 44th Gangnam fuel economy test on my way home from work. The vehicle to be introduced today is the new Grandeur 3.5 gasoline model. I'm going to test how much of a fuel economy difference this model compares to a 1.6 petrol turbo hybrid model. Today, a total of 4 vehicles are 6th generation Grandeur 2.4 hybrid, Grandeur 3.3 gasoline, G83.5 gasoline turbo, and Carnival High Limousine 3.5 gasoline. Let's look at the combined fuel economy. The Grandeur 2.4 hybrid has an official fuel economy of 14.9 kilometers liter, the Grandeur 3.3 gasoline 9.6 kilometers liter, and the Genesis G83.5 gasoline turbo 8.4 kilometers liter. And the Carnival High Limousine was equipped with the same engine as this vehicle, but the fuel consumption was 8.4 kilometers liter. The Grandeur 3.5 gasoline vehicle to be discussed today has a combined fuel economy of 9 kilometers liter, and city mileage is 7.7 kilometers liter. So, you can see that there is a difference between this vehicle and the Carnival High Limousine in terms of fuel economy by about 0.3 to 0.6 kilometers L. First, today's test drive is the Grandeur 3.5 NA Calligraphy AWD 4-wheel drive model, and it is a full-option vehicle. In the case of tires, Pirelli PO 245 4020-inch tires are applied, making it the highest-end powertrain with the lowest fuel efficiency among the Grandeur models. Our focus today is comparing this vehicle to the Kia K8 and Genesis G80 models, so I'm going to talk about which vehicle would be better to buy compared to 3.5 gasoline standards. In addition to this test, a video about the Grandeur 1.6 hybrid will be uploaded, so please subscribe and like it. I will depart exactly at 5 p.m. Arrive at Guro Digital Complex Station. It took about 24 minutes to get here, and the fuel economy is showing about 3.4 kilometers liter. I'm a little embarrassed because the fuel economy is not as good as I thought. The 6th generation 2.4 hybrid model of the Grandeur took 20 minutes to get here, and the fuel economy was 9.1 kilometers liter. And the 6th generation Grandeur 3.3 gasoline model took 14 minutes and fuel economy was 5.1 kilometers liter. And the Genesis G83.5 gasoline turbo model took 12 minutes and the fuel economy was 4.6 kilometers liter. Carnival High Limousine took 14 minutes and fuel consumption was 4.9 kilometers liter. I kept looking for an ISG function that turns off the engine when the car stops for a while driving and then turns on the engine when driving again, but there is none. So it's a little disappointing in terms of city driving fuel economy. In fact, even if there is an ISG function, there are many people who do not use it, so it is a bit ambiguous to say that the lack of this function is a disadvantage. What is certain, however, is that this feature will increase the cost of batteries in all cars. Since the slightly more expensive battery called the AMG battery is used, it costs quite a bit when it is discharged, so the lack of this feature has advantages as well as disadvantages. Now let's talk about the size of this vehicle. In the case of the 7th generation Grandeur, the length is 5,035 mm and the width is 1,880 mm, and the empty weight is 1,780 kilograms. All vehicles introduced today are based on 3.5 gasoline, and the Genesis G80 model is based on 3.5 gasoline turbo. The overall length of the K8 was 5,015 mm, and at the time of launch, it was a model that surpassed cars such as the E-Class, BMW 5 Series, and Volvo S90, but a larger Grandeur came out, and the overall width of the K8 is 1,875 mm. The overall height is rather low at 1,544 mm, and the empty vehicle weight is 1,715 kilograms. In fact, it seems that there are many people who are thinking about buying the Grandeur or the Genesis G80 rather than the K8. In the case of the G80, the length is 4,995 mm and the width is 1,925 mm, which is longer than the E-Class or BMW 5 Series, and compared to the Volvo S90, which has the longest length, the G80 is wider. It is also a turbo model and has various functions and an empty vehicle weight of 1,970 kilograms. Now let's look at the output. The 3.5 gasoline NA model has an output of 300 horsepower and a torque of 36.5 kg/m. The Genesis G83.5 gasoline turbo model has a maximum output of 380 horsepower and a maximum torque of 54 kg/m. Next, let's look at compound fuel economy. In the case of the 3.5 gasoline top-of-the-line Grandeur, two 45/4519-inch wheels are applied on a 19-inch basis, while K8 is applied with two 45/4019-inch wheels. In this case, the combined fuel consumption is 9.2 km/liter for the Grandeur and 9.3 km/liter for the K8. City fuel economy is 7.9 km/L for both models, and in the case of the Genesis G83.5 gasoline turbo model, it features a combined fuel economy of 8.3 km/liter and city fuel economy of 7.2 km/liter. So, it has rather ambiguous figures to simply compare the Grandeur and K8, which have the same powertrain as the 3.5 gasoline turbo model, the Genesis G80 model. In fact, it would be correct to compare it with the Genesis G82.5 gasoline turbo model in terms of price or output, but today we will compare it with the 3.5 gasoline turbo model. And when I test drive the Grandeur 1.6 gasoline turbo hybrid model next time, I will compare how efficient the G82.5 gasoline model is and how good the Grandeur 1.6 gasoline hybrid is compared to the Grandeur LPG model. Currently, there are about 600 meters left to Seoul station, and the fuel economy is showing 5 km/L so far. It seems that we can see a lot of Grandeurs on the road now. Both the new Grandeur and the old Grandeur are selling a lot, so it is natural to see the Grandeur on the road now. The reason why flagship models are selling so much seems to be that people who buy vehicles in Korea have a much higher eye level and prefer larger vehicles. Now, this is Seoul station. It took 31 minutes to reach the 6 km section of Seoul station, showing a fuel economy of 5.1 km/L. I will go to Seoul National University station and check the fuel economy once more and continue the conversation. I arrived at the 8 km section of Seoul National University station. It took 43 minutes to get here, but today the road is more blocked than expected, and fuel economy is 5.1 km/L. Up to this point, the 6th generation 2.4 hybrid model of the Grandeur took 39 minutes and showed good fuel economy at 12 km/liter. And the Genesis G83.5 gasoline turbo took 29 minutes to get here and the fuel economy was 6.2 km/liter. In the case of the Carnival High Limousine 3.5 gasoline model, which is the same engine as this vehicle, it took 29 minutes and the fuel economy was 7.1 km/liter. So you can see that the fuel economy of this vehicle is not as good as expected. In addition, the Carnival High Limousine is large, but this vehicle is an AWD 4-wheel drive model, so fuel economy is not so good. Now let's talk about car prices. First, the price of the Grandeur 3.5 two-wheel drive model ranges from $30,082 to $36,812, and there are options ranging from $31,651 to $38,084 for the 3.5 AWD all-wheel drive model. So I think you can see that the price difference is quite big than you think. The above prices are for South Korea, and options and prices may vary by country. In terms of price, hybrids are actually the most expensive. So, although it is equipped with a 1.6 engine, the Grandeur 1.6 gasoline turbo hybrid model shows a price range from $32,096 to $38,857. Therefore, the hybrid model is about $2,063 more expensive than the 3.5 gasoline model based on the full option. And for the 2.5 petrol NA models, prices range from $28,172 to $34,905. In other words, the Grandeur seems to have formed a price range of about $28,051 to $28,824. And let's compare the K8 as well. The price of the K8 is from $27,715 to $32,140 based on the 3.5 two-wheel drive model, which is about $4,547 cheaper than the Grandeur based on the two-wheel drive model. Of course, when the Grandeur has the best specifications in its class, option parts are much better, so it is difficult to judge whether it is cheap or expensive just by looking at the price. Considering this point and continuing to look at the price, the K8 four-wheel drive model shows a selling price ranging from $31,284 to $34,596. So, compared to the Grandeur 3.5 two-wheel drive model, there is a difference of about $2,121. And for those of you looking to pick up the Genesis G80 model, if two-wheel drive is okay and you want a 3000cc vehicle like the 3.5, the Genesis G80 two-wheel drive model starts at $47,575 and goes up to around $53,030. However, when I checked the price with all options applied, I came up with a price range of around $63,863. So if you put the 3.5 model in, it looks like it could go up to about $60,629 by default. Compared to the Genesis Chapter 3.5 gasoline turbo four-wheel drive full option, it has a price range of around $66,009. The price point is quite high, and the $28,116 Genesis G80 we just mentioned is about $2,122 cheaper if you subtract all-wheel drive. And if you opt for the 2.5 gasoline turbo model rather than the 3.5 gasoline turbo, it's about $5,075 cheaper. Excluding various options that are not needed here, it is meaningful to purchase the Genesis G80 only after paying at least $56,818. First of all, it feels like the class itself of the vehicle brand is intentionally divided. So, even though the Grandeur is now a new car that is only 2 to 3 years old, there are still parts that cannot follow the G80 in options or driving reduction. And in the case of the G80, rear-wheel-based four-wheel drive, Grandeur is front-wheel-based four-wheel drive. In the case of active suspension, the Grandeur has definitely risen to the level of imported cars now. Compared to imported cars, I think it is quite meaningful in that it shows a similar ride while the price of the car is cheaper. Although the Grandeur has developed a lot, it still feels somewhat constrained compared to the G80 because it must be made within the price range of the vehicle. Now, let's move to Yeoksam Station and continue the story. Please also press subscribe and like. It is 500 meters before arrival at Yeoksam Station. I'm in a bit of a traffic jam right now, so I turned on my camera first. It took 1 hour and 17 minutes to get here, and the fuel economy is 5.6 kilometers liter. The fuel economy is worse than expected, but all of the Grandeur gasoline models do not have an ISG function. That said, it's a bit disappointing to have to watch fuel economy continue to drop on busy roads as there's no automatic engine shutoff. For reference, my vehicle, the BMW M3 3.0 gasoline turbo vehicle, took about 2 hours in the fuel economy test on the way home from work in Gangnam, and the fuel economy was about 7.6 kilometers liter. At the time of the M3 test, the reason why BMW had better fuel economy than the G80 gasoline 3.5 model or the Stinger 3.3 turbo model was because of the ISG function. Of course, this function is expensive, but it was a test that showed that it is of great help to fuel economy on congested roads. If you're curious, please watch the BMW M3 fuel efficiency test video on my way home from work in Gangnam on my channel. The Grandeur 2.4 hybrid model took 1 hour and 28 minutes to Yeoksam Station and showed good fuel economy of 13.6 kilometers liter. And the 6th generation Grandeur 3.3 gasoline model came out almost the same at 1 hour and 14 minutes, and the fuel economy was 6.4 kilometers liter. Obviously there is some difference in gas mileage between the 3.5 and 3.3, and the Genesis G80 3.5 gasoline turbo model seems to have an ISG function in my memory, but it took 1 hour and 4 minutes and showed a fuel economy of 6.9 kilometers liter. And the Carnival High Limousine 3.5 gasoline model took 1 hour and 11 minutes to get here, and the fuel economy was 6.5 kilometers liter. For reference, the current temperature is 14 degrees and I am running with the door open without using the air conditioner or fan function, but the fuel economy is 5.5 kilometers liter. When choosing between the K8, G80, and Grandeur, you must consider all aspects such as output, fuel economy, and price. However, personally, if I had to point out the reason why I must buy the Grandeur, I think it would be because of the newly applied CCNC function. Originally, Hyundai Motor Company's infotainment system was based on Linux or Android, but now it uses its own OS. The infotainment applied to the current K8 was the latest infotainment system called 5W, which was introduced at the launch of the Kia K8. The characteristic of this infotainment system is that it has a car pay function that allows payment in the car and a car-to-home function that allows you to control electronic products with the IoT function in the car. Hyundai Motor Company is actively utilizing CCOS, a next-generation infotainment system after 5W. In the case of CCOS, functions such as augmented reality navigation, easy payment for in-vehicle parking fees, wireless OTS system update, and engine start by remote control of a smartphone are possible. This CCOS feature was created around November 2020. CCIC developed this and developed it for Genesis. CCIC was first applied to the 2021 GV60 electric vehicle model. So, the Genesis infotainment system started with augmented reality navigation and applied various CCOS-based infotainment. But in the case of the Grandeur, it is correct to use a 5W system similar to the K8. However, Hyundai Motor Group applied CCNC to show the part about the flagship and use new features and updates more smoothly. So, CCNC was first applied to the Grandeur and then applied to the Kona and Sonata models. On the other hand, it was not applied to the Avante facelift model between Sonata and Kona. Perhaps it was because of the problem of rising car prices. As such, the CCNC function is also the main reason for the increase in vehicle prices. But I want to say that it shows good performance as much as it is expensive. CCIC is currently used by Genesis, and CCNC is expected to be applied to the Grandeur, Kona, Sonata, and Santa Fe full change, which are mainly used by Hyundai Motors. Then you might ask if CCNC is functionally better. The CCNC model has a built-in CAM2, E-high pass function, and if you look closely, the Grandeur with CCNC may look a little better. On the other hand, the augmented reality navigation function is only applied to Genesis CCIC. So, it seems that the class is divided a little between Genesis and Hyundai Motors. And Hyundai Motor Company also says that CCIC is a slightly more advanced version. So I wonder if CCIC will probably be included in the next GV80 coupe model or year change. And to say one more thing, the around view of a general vehicle is mainly used when parking or stopping, and there is no around view when the speed is 10 to 15 km/h. However, as CCNC added the ability to use around view while driving, it remains to be seen whether the built-in CAM2 and high-pass function will be applied to the next Genesis model or facelift. Perhaps the G80 facelift will have a rough outline this year at the earliest. So, in the case of the Kia K8, wireless updates through OTA are possible, but there are limitations. But CCNC is the next generation of infotainment that pushes the bar a little higher. Occasionally, when you receive a vehicle recall notice, you are often asked to visit a service center to update your vehicle. However, now that CCNC is installed, wireless updates are possible through the OTA function, so the need to visit the service center has been reduced since the Grandeur. The Grandeur and K8 say that the most important parts of the car, such as the engine and mission, are the same, but in terms of software, the price difference is a bit meaningless because the Grandeur is a significantly evolved model. Of course, the instrument panel design is much better in the K8. However, with the OTA function of the Grandeur CCNC, if the instrument panel design is changed later, it seems that better graphics than the K8 can be added. Also, in my personal opinion, I think there will be a function to decorate the infotainment design with in-app payment in the future. I don't know if that's possible, but wouldn't it be easier to add features like self-driving via in-app purchases someday? Since Mercedes-Benz and other car brands are still working on allowing options to be removed or added for an additional fee, it got me wondering if a Grandeur might one day be possible. So, if you are thinking about buying a K8 or a Grandeur, I personally think it is better to buy a Grandeur even if you pay a little more. There is a price difference of about $3,036 for similar options. So if your goal is to buy cheaply, you can buy the K8. If you want to buy the K8 but are disappointed because there is no CCNC, I think the next facelift will be applied with CCNC, so it would be nice to wait a little bit. Up to this point, the fuel economy was 5.3 kilometers L, and the required time was 1 hour 34 minutes. Right now, there are still blocked roads, so I will keep going and finish at Seoul station. Arrive at Seoul station. It took about 2 hours and 20 minutes, and the fuel economy was 4.8 kilometers liter. So far, The Grandeur 2.4 hybrid model was 14.3 km/L and the Grandeur 3.3 gasoline was 6.1 km/L. And the G83.5 gasoline turbo also showed fuel economy of 6.2 km/L. However, today's test time is too long, so an accurate comparison is somewhat ambiguous. Still, it would be nice to see that this fuel economy came from a similar distance. If you look closely at the Grandeur models between the K8 and G80, I would like to say that the purchase point is a fairly good vehicle. Today's test ends here. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you.